Hello, I'm back. We're back. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us, for joining the Dallas Opera. Welcome. My name is Quo, and I am shortly being joined by my co host. She's going to hop in a
Hey y'all,
minute.
Kristen Roberts here. Coming to you live one more time.
Yes, we're back. We're back live. And we'll probably be doing quite a few more live shows. So be on the lookout for that. We like to hold for just a bit. So maybe we'll hold for one more minute and we'll be sure as people are hopping in to welcome everyone to the show.
Somebody says your teeth are popping.
My teeth. Oh, thank you. Braces. Braces that, I had on longer than I needed to, but that's a whole other story. I don't know what was happening. There, yeah, braces. Thank you. Oh, it was bad. I'm gonna tell you all about my braces story while we're waiting. It was bad. I had the one where you had to turn it to widen at the top. Man, I could not say union. I couldn't say rooster for a long time. So W's and R's still trip me up to this day. I couldn't say. I was like,
I'm not gonna
rooster.
laugh. I'm not laughing at that.
It was because it was at
But,
the thing was at the top, at the roof of my mouth. It was like
I
rooster.
remember I had friends that had those and had to
Yeah.
just
Turn
got
your
up, and then
key.
the cuts on the lips, and then the dodgeball. Have they outlawed that game yet?
Oh, dodgeball.
Somebody would get hit, and if they got hit in the face, which got you in
Oh,
trouble.
because it cuts
But the
there.
braces.
Okay.
Just, oof.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. All right. We're not here to talk about braces though, but thank you for indulging us.
We wanted to
Well,
entertain just for a little bit. We can vamp while everybody gets on. It's okay. But it's 1:02 now. We can get started, right?
mhm.
All right. We are officially started. My name is Kristian Roberts, Director of Education at the Dallas Opera. I am, of course, here joined by my fabulous friend and co-host.
Quo Decia Johnson, Education and Company Culture Manager for the Dallas Opera.
And of course, we're back again for another live
Bye.
taking the stage with Kristian.
And Quo.
So today, folks, we're going to talk about a few things. First of all, thank you all so much for joining
Yeah.
us
Thank
today.
you.
Again, we cannot thank you enough. Everybody has been so supportive. It is very much appreciated, especially during times such as these. I also want to, of course, always give a shout out to TDO Network, David Lamelli. I hope you're getting some well-earned rest, my friend.
Hey, David.
I will not say our secret stage manager's name on the air,
Yes. And then
but we
also shout out to
appreciate her.
Christopher Leach.
Oh,
Part of
yes, that's my
the,
boy. He's working his tail off right now, so we appreciate it.
I'll say his
Um,
name.
and Yeah, no, he'll be fine. And then, of course, the TDO staff, as always, always supportive. We very much thank you. It really, really, and truly is a blessing to always be with you all. So, Quo, I want to take it over to you because we are doing something that we've not done before here. I think this is the first time you've done it in sessions, you've not done it here. We're going to do it
Yeah.
here now. So, can we please talk about what we're about to do, what you're
Yeah,
about to do?
absolutely. And so, as the company culture manager, a lot of my work focuses on equity because that's a big thing that we are all collectively realizing that we need. That includes all types of equity and the fact that not everyone is given the same access to resources. Not everyone starts with the same access to resources. And part of achieving equity is also acknowledging truth. It is centering truth and understanding that the narratives that we have thus far are incomplete. And so, in doing this work, we also do land and people acknowledgments. And so, we'll be doing that going forward for our episode. So, please join me in that, in this moment, in this honoring, in this recognition. So, I'd like to take the time, the very necessary time, to acknowledge that we in Dallas are on stolen land. We as an entire nation of the United States, we are on stolen land. And so in Dallas, particularly, we are on the land of the Caddo, of the Wichita, and of the Comanche. So we want to always take the time to acknowledge that these sovereign nations that were here were removed forcefully. And then people who were stolen from their homes were brought, specifically here in Dallas, were brought here and enslaved. And that they were forced to create what we now enjoy as Dallas. So I do this land and people acknowledgement to acknowledge the pain, to acknowledge the harm, to acknowledge the empires and the sovereignness that was already in place before we started to cut that part out of the story. And then to acknowledge that we all have the opportunity, we have the agency to go forward and to change that, to work to reduce harm, to work to heal, to work together with all of us who are here in this space together now. We did not create it, but we do have the opportunity to change it, to make it better. So I always do the land and people acknowledgement with that understanding, with that grace, with that humility. So I thank you all for joining me in acknowledging the land and the people of this nation.
Thank you so much, Cole. I think it's important that we look at our roots and look at all of our history, as unpleasant as some of it may be at times. So if it's rooted in truth, we know that we can move forward from that. So I really appreciate you making sure that we do that and that we continue to do that.
Yes.
So, I know for some of you that might have been a little educational, that might have been something you've never heard before. And that sort of leads me into our topic for today. And in particular, arts education.
Arts education.
We get a question a lot of, what do you do? I know I've, as many times as the education assistant, as the education manager, as the education senior manager, and now the director of education, I have been asked on numerous occasions, how on earth did you get where you are and what do you do? I don't know, my friend, my co-host, my colleague, I know she has had the same question when she tells people, where she works and what she does. They're kind of like, what is that? So we wanted to get into that a little bit today, about what it means to truly be in arts education. Oh, look at David. Come on, David. Thanks for joining us. David, aren't you supposed to be taking a nap or something, sir?
He did. He took it nap.
Thank you for joining us, my friend. But we wanted to talk about arts education today and its importance, defining it, what it looks like, what we hope it could look like, all those sorts of things today, because it's something that we have a passion about. I would not be sitting in this chair right now if I did not have a passion for it, for education, period. But when it's put together with the arts, I think it becomes a little bit of a mysterious entity to folks, particularly when you say you work in education for an opera company. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. So Cole, let's dive in a little bit, and I'm going to just dive right in a little bit and talk about defining it. Defining arts education, defining it as it looks right now, and then a little later on we can get into what we would like to see in the future for it. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And those to everyone who's joining us, welcome. This is Taking the Stage with Kristian and Quo, here with the Dallas Opera. And we are speaking about arts education and the importance of arts education, as Kristian just said. So arts education looks different for a lot of organizations. There is not this kind of standard, this is what it means to educate in the arts. But there are different types, different realms, if you will, of arts education. So that is education in the arts, and that is the actual practical experience of learning to play an instrument, of creating art, of dancing, of all of the art forms of visual arts. And that is what a lot of us do in the arts, right? A lot of artists have that kind of education, right? My degree's in music, so having that education. And then there's also arts integrated education, in which we use the arts to learn about other things in addition to learning about art or an art form. And so the learning of another skill comes through both the art and then whatever the other focus of or whatever the other component is. Because of that, as I say again, the arts education looks different for everyone, for every organization. And in many cases, it's programs. They ask us all the time, well, what do y'all do? We bring opera to students, we bring students to the opera. It also includes adult education. So sometimes it is teaching about the art form. And again, sometimes it's using the art form to teach about other things. For the Dallas Opera and the way that we approach arts education, it's a mix of both. And in most cases, it is arts integrated. So you will learn, of course, you have to learn about math. Everybody has to learn about math. But we consider, what does it mean as you learn about math to also apply that same knowledge to the art form or to opera? What does it mean to learn
Vice
about?
versa.
Oh yeah, or
Or
vice
to
versa.
take music and get a student to understand math, because you
Yes,
can do both.
yes. And what does it mean to understand what it means to divide by subdividing beats? How that correlates and how it is in everything and everywhere. What does it mean to learn about geometry and then have to consider what it means to create a set or design a set? So it's all of these kind of very wonderful connections that we get to make through arts education. So it's not always about you will learn, your forms, learn your different formations, learn how to make sure you dance on points, learn to make sure you have proper embouchure. That is a form of arts education. And then there's also the arts integrated form of education as well. And so you'll find many organizations, many arts organizations do both.
And so just to sort of elaborate on she gave an example of math used to build a set, but we also talk about math on the administrative side. We immediately connect it to the accounting team and to the finance team, and the real life application that has to be applied there. So not only is it done in the creation of the art, not only is the math used in the creation of the art, but it is also used well in the paying for the art. I really just
And the sustaining of the arts.
and the sustaining of it. Talk to our development team, our fundraisers, and they will tell you about that. So we all have a good grip on math when it comes to looking at our budgets, especially in the arts. But it's one of the things that we also integrate into our program. We not only integrate the actual, like I said, creation of the art, but also what it takes to sustain and execute it. Okay, and pay. Quite frankly, just pay for it. To quote a dear friend of mine, opera costs money. So that's just the way it is. So we talk about sort of what the role of arts organizations is in this work. And like Quo said, it looks different for everybody. A lot of times it will depend on where you are, what the education standards are, state, national, whatever they are. It will depend on that, what standards you have to meet through that art form. It will also depend on funding. Depend on the size of the company, depend on the district, the principal of a school. There's a lot that goes into it. It's very, very layered. On the adult education side of things, it really comes down to, sometimes it comes down to things like time. And does somebody have time to come and join us for a panel discussion? Because, adults, we have to go to work. We do, So, but a lot of the times it's thinking about that. It also depends on the community and the culture and the history of a place, and the research that goes into your city or your town or your state. So there are a lot of factors that sort of form what your programming looks like. And for us, with Quo and I, where we work, for us is tailoring to the needs of what our schools and what our communities say they need to see from us, and what we can be fiscally responsible doing as well. So it's a balance in that approach. So I say that because, again, a lot of times people say, what does the education department does? What does the community engagement and education department, what do you guys do? And that's really the gist of it. The gist of it is, like Paul said, taking opera out into the public, bringing people into the opera. And in the case of, me and Quo, we mostly work with students, K through 12 and college. So I will say, we get the question, especially right now, there's a lot of questions in the field about, what is the role now? Because
Yeah.
we know often during times like this, arts fundings in schools gets cut. When we go into periods of recession and the country is suffering, arts are normally one of the first things that get cut. Now that's a tangent I could go on, but I won't today. But you can look at the research, and you will understand what I'm talking about. But we always talk about what our role is. What is our role? How do we make sure that in some way, somehow that the arts are still able to move and the arts are still able to progress
Mm-hmm.
in our community, in our schools, in our own venue. So, like I said, I won't go on that tangent, but it does. Quo's laughing at me because I will. But we look at our roles in that, and I think one of our biggest roles is to listen.
Yeah.
To listen. Go
I
ahead,
would say
Quo.
our role has not changed.
No.
Why we do what we do, that has not changed. So for those who are still kind of trying to figure out what needs to happen in this time, especially as we're dealing with all these many factors, not being able to gather to create the art in the same way, I would say our role has not changed. Who we are as arts educators has not changed. We have always been there to provide opportunities to learn art and to learn through the arts. That has not changed. We don't get to pause. You don't get to stop and say, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Yeah. We can take that little moment, right? And then, we get back to it. So I would say the role has not changed. As Kristian said, it's a matter of listening, and then it's a matter of co-creation, which not everyone is used to doing. And that is perfectly okay. Now is the perfect time to start to co-create things, to find out your own needs as an organization, as an arts education department, and then to find out the needs of the community, and then to find ways to meet those needs, putting community first, putting students of all ages first, and then finding out what we do to come in and supplement. The art itself is a vehicle, as I say so often, right? It's about the connection, not so much the art. And so as we use our art, it's still a matter of the role that we play in our communities. It's a matter of the role that we play when we're engaging with other education institutions. That is primary school, secondary, as we get into college, those things. So it's all of those things and how we use the arts to help bring about that connection, especially as we're dealing with everything right now. It requires creativity, but that is okay.
Yeah.
We are in a creative industry.
We are creatives. That's what we do. And I think that's, in the beginning of this, I will admit, I was like, oh Lord, what are we going to do? Like,
And everybody, and that's fine.
everybody was like that. They were like, what are we going to do? But, something that Quo talks about all the time is she pointed out when we were, running through this exercise with the team, she was like, we already know what to do. We just have to do something different. It's just going to look different. It's going to feel different.
Yeah.
And I think we have to understand that that's okay to not know what to do, and then say, but this is what we do know to do. And then figure out how to utilize those tools and that creativity that still remains, and and what got us into this in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to call on that right now, a little bit. But I will say that we have seen that. And then of course there's the other side of it, because there's definitely a business side of it. There's the impact, the measuring of impact, those sorts of things, which we are having to now as an industry as a whole, trying to figure out how we now measure impact, what that looks like in a time where things are moving to virtual spaces. Mm-hmm. But again, I say that we are a very creative group of people. We are a creative bunch. So we will find a way. We have to. I have to give myself snaps on that because we will. Okay.
Yes. We will find
so,
a way.
So I will, start preaching a little bit on that. But I guess the next thing that I want to talk about, because, a lot of the times, last week we talked a little bit about our first contact, with opera, and how, for us, it started at our houses and in churches,
Yeah.
But but there were also programs and things that we grew up around. And I was telling Quo just before the show that when we were talking through everything, and I was like, I just remembered one of the programs. I mean, I just freshly remembered a program that happened when I was in kindergarten, you know. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about first experience of an arts organization
Mm-hmm.
influencing where we are right now and influencing and going into schools and going into places, for ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to go first and talk about your first experience?
Yes, I don't recall my very, very first experience, but I've always loved art. So art class was always my favorite. I will say I used to skip. Yeah, I used to skip. I used to skip other classes so I could go hang out in the art room. So
You
anytime
skipped a grade, friend, so what does it matter?
I
I'm
was,
sitting on here with a genius.
I
Okay.
was, I was engaged in class, yes, and I love learning all things. But it was the art class and it was music class that truly kept my attention. And so we hear so often from the students that we work with, it's like, Miss, I wouldn't be here, if it wasn't for this class. Or I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for theater or the fact that I get to be in this play and I get to do these things. That is very real. That is
Yes.
very, very real. And so having someone either come to the school or having teachers who are already at the school to teach us about music, and to teach us about all these other things that I was just kind of so used to being in and finding out how those things worked and how to do them in a more efficient way in some ways was just for me. I don't recall my true first engagement with another organization coming to my school until well, never. Actually.
And that's
I
why we
remember,
do what we do.
yes, that's why I had to go out. I had to go out and go to schools. I went to charter schools and they were rather small for most of my life, or that part of my life. So it was charter schools and then kind of public schools. And so we didn't really have people come to us as often, but we had field trips, which is a part of organizations presenting opportunities. So it was just a field trip and being able to go to spaces, to go to the museum. I remember going to the Science Museum. I remember going to the African American Museum of Art in Dallas, and all of those wonderful things. So I do remember those and just sitting and staring at paintings or hands-on engagement or going to places and they have to tell me, don't touch the piano. Because I was a kid. I was like, like, oh, look it. And so in that, just having that opportunity and having the ability for me to go into spaces and have that creation take place. And then for us to be able to take those things back with us. So that
Mhm.
is how the schools got, or that's how the organizations got into the schools that I attended. We would go and visit them. They're like, here are these things, follow up. And then to bring that back, to have those conversations, to allow that to inspire what my friends and I were doing. We're okay. Well, now we're going to create these things together. We're going to have a whole play. Let's do it this way. And so that was kind of my first engagement with organizations bringing in arts education. But it was also the continuous engagement of having arts education in school
Mhm.
and having those classes, having those programs at school. So, and what about you?
Well, for me, like I said, I grew up in a small town, and I mean the biggest town next to us was Waco, Texas, and of course there's Baylor University there, there's McLennan Community College, and so I think the first sort of organization that I had was when I would do piano contests
Oh, whoa.
at McLennan Community College.
Okay.
My teacher in my hometown, her name was Frances Hudson, rest her soul. She made sure that my brother and I would go to that competition.
Mm.
And so what started at home was me with us asking to take piano lessons. That was the first time I had an actual entity
Hmm.
I was exposed to an actual entity, an organization, and it might have been an educational institution, but that
Hmm.
was that first run in. But they had this piano competition that they held for students, my age. I was in third or fourth grade, so I remember that. I remember the first time when I ended up going to McLennan Community College, when I right out of high school, and I remember the first time I stepped back into the room I used to play in.
Yeah.
It was very surreal
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden I remember my 8-year-old self sitting at the piano, just nervous as I wanted to be, and the same teachers that judged some of the same teachers who would judge the competition back then were on staff and faculty then. And so that was really, really cool for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, though, in my hometown, and I say this to people from small towns to understand the importance of this, because just before when Quo and I were going through going through the show and talking about where we wanted to go with the show today, I told her, I said, something just occurred to me. I had a kindergarten teacher who held a sort of summer camp
Summer.
in
Yep.
her garage,
Yep.
a
Summer.
garage. So I saw this woman all year in kindergarten. We had half days back then. And then in the summer, she had a summer camp that my mom enrolled me in,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I would go and do art projects.
Yes.
I remember having popcorn and shaking it up in powder, and it would be blue popcorn, and then we string it and make a necklace. I remember painting rocks and turning them into animals. I remember all these things. I'm not a visual artist. Quo has seen my stick man. That's why I depend on her for any visual arts projects that we need. Lord, for talent that is not mine. Amen and hallelujah. But I remember doing that. I remember going there, and I remember my mom taking the time to get me
Yeah.
dressed, get me up, get ready to go, drop me off, and then she would come pick me up. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She could, and she took care of us all the time. She took care of the entire all of us kids. There were 5 of us. But my mom made it a point to take me somewhere where I could engage with other kids some of them I went to school with, some I was in same class with, but we would go in and we would go to Miss Fitz's garage and we would
Miss
be
Fit.
able to create. She provided a space for us to create, even in a town as small as McGregor, Texas. That's why I cannot emphasize enough the importance also of people creating a space
Yes.
to be able to do that. And I don't know what drove Miss Fitz to do that. I don't know what was in her that made her do that. I'm assuming it's because she was a fantastic educator. What
Mm-hmm.
I do know is that she saw a need and she created a space and fulfilled that need.
Yeah.
So I also need people to understand you don't have to be a huge arts organization
No.
to make a difference. You can be a teacher that has a vision and wants to provide a space for someone. You can be a piano teacher that wants to make sure that the children are introduced to something. You can do all of these same things. There's a way to still be able to do it. That's the role right there. That's where the role comes in. Again, I said it comes from the people. And so if you're from Dallas, Texas, which is a big city, or from McGregor, Texas, which is a small town, Cole and I still had arts experiences that have formed who we are now and what we've decided to do now. Lord, I'm going on a tangent right now. I didn't mean to. I said
But
I wasn't going to do that today.
in sharing that, it made me remember that I would go. My mom made sure that we participated in the mayor's reading experiences over the summer, just all these summer engagements. So most of that engagement for me came through
Yes,
summer. It came through Freedom School, where we went and we learned about African American history because it was
yes,
not being taught in school. So we learned these things, but we did it through the arts. So it was
yes.
art and song and dance and music and theater integrated all throughout the learning process of so many of the summer programs that I went to. So it's Freedom School, the Boys and Girls Club, all these things. And so,
Yep.
yes, it makes a difference, both the in school and out of school hours and engagement.
Well, and I will drop another one flying over. Don't sleep on your libraries.
Don't sleep on
Because
the
I spent a lot of time in libraries as a child. I volunteered at the library as a child. My mother knew the librarian's name. Believe it or not, her name was Miss Bookout.
Oh,
Bookout. I'm dead serious. I could not believe that. My mother will vouch for this, okay? But that was her name. And we put on plays at the library. We did volunteer work. It's probably why I'm a bibliophile now, why I love books. My parents encouraged us to read, and they gave us the freedom. Oh, look at Scales 18 talking about they love the library. Yes,
yeah,
love the library. Okay. It's probably why I worked in libraries pretty much my entire
yeah.
college time I was in college, I was working in a library. And so I will say that too, about the services the library provides in that way. So that's another way arts education gets integrated. And so that brings me to the next part. If you don't have anything, do you have anything more you want to?
No.
It sort of brings me to the next part of this, because it brings me to the importance of arts education and what it looks like and what everybody's role is in it. I think about we had Rosara Cruz on.
Yeah.
And you remember the story she told about her father?
Mm-hmm.
And about how through her engagement with the arts, he engaged in the arts.
Yes.
I don't think people understand the importance of that enough. And then obviously her family was coming to watch her perform, and then her siblings was with her. I mean, that's so huge. So when we talk about arts education, it's not just sitting in a classroom. It's not just sitting. That is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we also talk about how it is literally everywhere and how it influences everything. And if you don't believe me, the next time you watch a movie, turn the sound off. Turn the soundtrack off.
Or turn it off.
Or turn the movie off, period.
Either or. Yeah.
Just don't do it. The next time you have a gathering, a barbecue, Lord, please let us be able to do that soon. The next time your family gathering, imagine, and I will say this to my African American brothers and sisters out there because they know what I'm talking about. Frankie Beverly not coming on the radio. Okay, Al Green not being on the radio. I say that because we have all these experiences where the arts have always been there.
Yeah.
And, where you were learning something and associating with arts with something. And so I say that because, one of the things that Quo and I talked about was the way that the arts expand through different facets of society, from the students to class to adults to your family to your community. And Quo, I want you to elaborate on that a little bit more because I think you put it together so well. So I'm gonna shut up now.
It's fine. It's fine. And so in this, it's a matter of the importance of understanding that when we as organizations, when we as arts administrators, we as artists bring art to others, understanding that, again, it's just a vehicle for connection. Those communities, schools, individuals already have art. We all create art. I know
Yes.
a lot of professional, as in you have been trained, you have the education, professional artists get upset when I say everybody's an artist. Everybody's not a professional artist, but everybody creates art. And so it's a matter of understanding that as we go to others or as we have others come to us, as we welcome others into the space, it's a matter of expanding the art that is already there by expanding the connections that are already there. We just kind of need to make sure we focus on that, which of course is why we always bring it back to the equity, to the inclusion piece, to the community piece, to the humility piece, access to the diversity. We always bring it back to that because once we strip ourselves of how great our art is, whatever realm, whatever art it is, and we start understanding how wonderful it is to create art with others, it extends to student, which extends to the rest of the class. I used to be upset because, class would get in trouble and just, all right, y'all not going to art class, man. Be quiet, y'all. Stop playing. I'm trying to finish my piece. And don't let it get to something with hands-on, clay, any of that. Like, y'all be quiet. But how that extends to the class. And this is of adults as well. So if we're looking at the creative aging community, they don't get in trouble for, talking. But how engaging with other adults in the creative aging community, how that creates those moments, and then how that extends outside of the class to the teachers, how that extends outside of the class and the teachers, the teaching artists, to family. As you said, or as Rosara shared, her father also kind of grew with her in what he did not already know about art form or about whatever art form she was looking at, or whatever composers, whatever pieces, playwrights. And so how that extends so much beyond just us bringing art or us having others come to us, that extends to family, that extends eventually to the community. As you have families who are participating in different forms of art or in different programs, that extends to the entire community, because now you have a community that is doing it in the same way. And when I say community, I mean in a geographical manner, but also just the school itself, what it's like to have the principal and everybody else say, hey, this is Arts Week, right? We've experienced that in a way. This is Arts Week and we're doing these things. And just that energy, that drive that comes with that. And so we're wanting to make sure that as we work to create those moments, especially in this time, and as we continue to work to create those moments, that we're being mindful of what it means to lock people out, that we're being mindful of what it means to exclude people by saying that, oh, okay, well, this is arts education, and we're going to separate that from everything else. Or this is a certain type of art form that is better than everything else. So everything else you're talking about, let's put that to the side. So we want to be mindful of what it means, of the honor, of the responsibility that we have as the Dallas Opera, as all arts organizations, in presenting programming and in being in the business of arts education and education through the arts.
Well, and I think we also, at this time, I remember we had Devlin DeCutler and now Christian Tony, who just recently got married. Shout out to Christian Haley, now Christian Tony, who just got married. But we had them on, and I remember Devlin talking about this, him being in the classroom, then being in the classroom and working with students. And how important this is, and how important the social connection is, how important it is for students to be able to get together and create something. What the arts, so can we just for a second just talk about that a little bit, about what the arts does for students, the skills that it teaches? Because I don't think people really understand that through just arts education, you go, oh, somebody's learning to play an instrument. Oh, somebody's learning to draw a picture. Oh, somebody's learning to identify that that's Beethoven, Symphony Number 5. Like, they just go, oh, that's what it is. And it's so much more than that, particularly in the creation of art. And one of the biggest things that I've seen, and me, I was an athlete, so I can attest to this. We talk about how sports creates teamwork.
Yes.
And I say that, have you ever created an opera before? Because that is teamwork. Okay, the same concept of teamwork. We talk about helping people break out of their shells. There are students who have been. Hey, Alexis. I just saw. Was that Alexa? Yeah, I saw her. But we talk about people we've talked to people who have said they've seen their students come out of their shells.
Yeah.
When they've engaged in something. We had the Maestro Manuel Viom on here that talked about.
Yeah.
Who spoke brilliantly about how, he had this sort of darkness hanging over him. And then whenever he was making music as a child, he was like, oh, that's the light. That's it. That's the light. So we talk about the mental health implications. We talk about also the cognitive abilities that are developed. We also talk about the social skills that are developed. Because you have to talk to somebody when you're creating an art piece with them. You have to you may not be talking to them. You have to communicate with them somehow when you're creating art together. So I don't want us to get away from that. We've heard numerous stories of kids who did one act, who are when they go to give a presentation at their company now, they are fantastic speakers in front of their board. Yeah. So we have to make sure that people understand when we talk about the arts and the skills that they build, it's not just skills in the creation of that art or in the execution of that art or in the sustaining of that art, that transfers over into so many different areas, much like sports can.
It's that creative process.
That's it.
The creative process, the discipline that comes in that creative process. It is the confidence that comes in that creative process and the understanding that you have the ability to create. And I think that as
you have a part, and it might not look like it might not look like the drawing of that set and all that, but it could be in the building of it. Yes. You might be a whiz at math, but you go, I don't know about laying it. But you know what? I can get these 2x4s together. I can build that platform.
Yes. You have a part. And then in that, it's the understanding, and check this out. It's the understanding that as we focus on that individualism itself cannot yield good art.
No.
And so when I say good art, because it's not to define what is and is not art, it is a matter of understanding that when we create for ourselves and whatever it means for us in our creative process, the moment we share that with everyone else, it becomes art that is interpreted by whomever is looking at it. And it will mean something different to every single person who sees it because we're all different. But And as we kind of step away from focusing just on self and sharing the art, that includes in focusing on organization when we're bringing art to others. As we focus on that, it's a matter of what can I do to connect with this other person, or what can I do to share this with this other person? In addition to, I have to create this with someone else, or I
Yes.
have to enjoy this with someone else, or I have to go through the process with someone else. And so through that, we understand accountability.
Yes.
Shout out to Prairie View A&M University, Dr. A.J. Taylor, because if one tenor was not singing what they needed to do in PV concert chorale, well, we're all stopping because
Yeah.
this is you are a part of a
Of
whole.
something.
You are a
Yes.
part of something, and there is grace with that. There is courage that comes with that. There's responsibility that comes with that. There's honor
Yes.
that comes with that. And these are additional things that we learn through the arts, through going through the process of this is not exactly what I want, and then understanding, but is it the difference between what you're able to do, what you need, and what you want? And
Yes.
those very realistic expectations that we learn to have and still strive against.
Yes. It's a,
But we learn to
it's ever learning.
ever learning, right? And so I think in so many ways, as our organizations are trying to find ways to continue to bring about arts education, we have to get back to that creative process.
Yes.
We have to
Agree.
lean back into what it means to provide the opportunity and then to be in the process of creating something with and for others. Self as
And
well, but with and for others.
absolutely. And I think I will say, as somebody who holds a leadership position, that we have to give our people the bandwidth to be able to do it too. And we have to give ourselves as leader the bandwidth to do it. Sometimes we put on that leadership hat and, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. But look, we still have to tap into that creativity that got us to those leadership positions as well.
Yeah, it's
And
there.
there are a lot of, it's there,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes as leaders that we forget, like sometimes I actually forget that I actually am a singer until somebody says, you sound like a singer when you speak. And I go, oh, wait, I am. Sometimes you just, you forget. Sometimes you forget times I forget. I was like, I do have a knack for music history. Let me, that I know how to do that. And I think we have to remember that, particularly in a time like this, where it seems like it feels like everything is against us.
Mm.
Because one thing that we do in opera, in the performing arts, is we gather. And
Ha.
we can't do that right now. We have to gather. So now all of us are like, how do we do this? But I think that if we tap into the thing that brought us here in the first place and remember, those places from whence we came, I think that is going to be a huge, huge turnaround in the attitude of going, you know what, we are creative. We can do this.
Yeah.
We have to tap into our artist selves right now.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me into the last portion of our show as we normally do. And again, if you have any questions, y'all, please feel free to type them out. Right now we're always open to answering questions. I don't think we've missed any. But I do want to say, I think this show overall has been very positive. It's often been like, let's do positive notes because it has been positive. But as kind of what we wanted to do today is to, sort of say what we do, why we do it, how we do it, what it looks like for us in particular, and know that it's going to look different for the organizations in your region, in your city, in your place of living.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we talk about the positive notes, we talked about a lot of them today. So, but I'm gonna let you do your thing because this is your segment. Positive quotes, Miss Quo. No.
Positive things to remember. So arts education in us, we have to remember not to get so caught up in defining it, more so just kind of acknowledging it and seeing it because it's there. It's everywhere. We use arts, we use songs to teach, we use narratives to learn, we use narratives to remember and to apply lessons. And so in that, the education and the art is there. There's no need to separate it. And then as we go through that, it's a matter of also focusing on that creative process because we all have our own. And then as we come together, leaning into our creativity, leaning into the education that we've had, leaning into those first moments that first got us connected to what we do and why we do what we do. And knowing that it's not something that we have to solve alone. I say all the time, you don't have to do it alone. Just like we're looking at everything else, you don't have to do it alone. It's a matter of working with others. We've gotten kind of siloed in some things somehow, but working with others so that we can continue to create amazing moments for this generation, for everyone within this era, and then everyone going forward. The art will continue. The education will continue in its very different forms and what that looks like. But knowing that we can be a part of what that means, and we can do so with confidence, we can do so with discipline, we can do so with acknowledging realistic expectations, and then being stubborn enough to push past that so that we can
listening. Please listen to people. Please listen.
And working with community, right? So all of these things are extremely important in how we go about doing what is necessary for us to continue to have the honor, for us to continue to do the work of arts educators.
I agree 100%. I think we're at an exciting time, even though, like I said, there's a lot of frightening things going on right now. But I do think, again, we talk from the very beginning of the show, we're not talking about toxic positivity here, but we're talking about realistic positivity. And I think that if we tap into the things and that we remember where we came from and why we're doing what we're doing, I think that's going to take and then we allow people the space to do so.
Mm-hmm. And then we expand so that we're not excluding people and not making excuses for excluding people.
Expand that circle. Yes, absolutely. I think we can do that. So I think that's a call to action, folks. I think that's the call to action. I think we are, like I said, interesting time. And I there will be another side of COVID. There will be an after COVID. We don't know what that looks like. But there will be another side. But during this time, right now, where we are right now, let's tap into what we know to do. And then let's look at the things that we know to do that were not serving us before that. And let's lay aside that weight and do something different. So folks, I want to thank you all for joining us today. I didn't see that we got any questions, but I see that we do have people watching. So thank you all as always. It is always a pleasure to be before you. It is always a pleasure for you to be with us. We always very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your support. Again, shout out to TDO Network. Shout out to David for putting us on to this, and doing this. Shout out to our stage manager who won't be named.
Shout out to you and everybody at TDO.
And TDO, we appreciate you all very much. Be bold, people. Be bold, be brave, and let's step outside of our comfort zone and let's do something great.
Yes.
And sign up for a library card. Yes, Scales 18. You tell them sign up for a library card. It's digital now. You can get them on your you can get ebooks.
Right.
If you don't go to the library, get a library card. Absolutely 100%. And partner with your libraries.
Yes.
Okay, and it goes for TDO too. We're working on it. Okay, we are. All right. Thank you all again. Hope you have a great rest of the week.
All right.